Saturn, the god of feminists, the god of homosexuals, the god of bankers, the god of twisting honor, justice, and liberty. Saturn, the devourer of his own children. Saturn, his festivals, the festival of Saturnalia, role reversals. Saturn. One could interpret Saturn as an evil god who inspires people to kill the children of a nation using a man-made intervention in agriculture. Saturn, also known as the Titan Kronos. He feared that his own children would overthrow him, and so he devoured them upon birth. The Greek myths, the Roman culture, Pythagoras, the Pythagoreans that inspired the Freemasons. Homosexuality was common in Rome and Greece. Oh, those of you who do not understand, those of you who refuse to understand that child sacrifice was part of the worship of Saturn. Oh, ye men of little understanding. And no, I don't blame you. I myself have never gone over this before. But if you look up child sacrifice in English Wikipedia, you'll find the Aztecs, you'll find Baal, you'll find Saturn. Saturn, one of the most cruel gods known to man, who devoured his own son. And yet here we have it in America. On the reverse side of the Great Seal, on the $1 bill, a reference to the Eclogue of Virgil, which is a reference to the reign of Saturn, the new order of the ages. It's worse than you know. In the book of Ezekiel, that from the time of the people of Israel were in the wilderness, the people of Judah had sacrificed their sons by fire. The book of Exodus. Phoenicia and Carthage. Carthage was notorious for child sacrifice. Plutarch even mentions the practice. Tertullian, Orosius, and Diodorus Siculus. Now, I'm not saying I know everything about Roman history, but it just takes one to do a quick search. Boom, there you have it. Some of the sources suggest that the babies were roasted to death on a heated bronze statue, according to Diodorus Siculus. There was in their city a bronze image of Kronos, extending its hands palms up and sloping toward the ground, so that each of the children, when placed thereon, rolled down and fell into a sort of gaping pit filled with fire. Bib.hist.20.14.6, Diodorus Siculus. At Carthage, a large cemetery exists that combines the bodies of both very young children and small animals. And those who argue in favor of child sacrifice have argued that if the animals were sacrificed, then so too were the children. Keep in mind that the elites worship Greek mythology. You see different Roman and European pagan mythologies. This guy, I forgot his name, he stole the fire from the gods. I'll put it in the comments. There's a statue of that. I believe it's some Rockefeller building. I'll put it in the comments. All right, so listen to this. This is from Plato's Republic. Now, some of you will make the argument, well, historians argue that whether or not this happened, that's irrelevant. It's not about what the truth is when you're dealing with the elite. It's what they believe, who they revere. They revere Plato. Later commentators have compared the accounts of child sacrifice in the Old Testament with similar ones from the Greek and Latin sources speaking of the offering of children by fire as sacrifices in the Punic city of Carthage, which was a Phoenician colony. Jordan Maxwell talks about a Phoenician Canaanite system. Clitarchus, in his Scholia of Plato's Republic, mentions the practice. Now I warn you, this is disturbing. Brace yourselves. There stands in the midst a bronze statue of Kronos, its hands extended over a bronze brazier, the flames of which engulf the child. When the flames fall upon the body, the limbs contract, and the open mouth seems almost to be laughing until the contracted body slips quietly into the brazier. Thus it is that the grin is known as sardonic laughter, since they die laughing. The reference also seems to clarify that the statue itself was not made to move by the flames, but rather the burnt and shriveled body of the victim was contorted by them. Diodorus Siculus, 2 references to practice. Himachar, on seeing how the throng was beset with superstitious fear, first of all put a stop to the destruction of the monuments, and then he supplicated the gods after the custom of his people by sacrificing a young boy to Cronus, and a multitude of cattle to Poseidon by drowning them in the sea. In former times they had been accustomed to sacrifice to this god the noblest of their sons, but more recently, secretly buying and nurturing children, they had sent these to the sacrifice. Plutarch, in De Superstition, also mentions the practice in Carthage. They themselves offered up their own children, and those who had no children would buy little ones from poor people and cut their throats as if they were so many lambs or young bird. These all mention burning of children as an offering to Cronus or Saturn, that is to Baal Hamon, the chief god of Carthage. Claims concerning Moloch and child sacrifice have also been created for negative effect. The Romans and Israelites describe child sacrifice as a practice of their evil enemies. Some scholars think that after the Romans finally defeated Carthage and totally destroyed the city, they engaged in post-war propaganda to make their arch enemies seem cruel and less civilized. The topic of whether Phoenician child sacrifice was real or a myth continues to be discussed in academic circles, including the work of Muhammad Hassan Fantar. The Quran documents pagan Arabians sacrificing their children to idols. So as you can see, when you look into it, and when you do the math, you see that it is impossible to come to the conclusion that the secret societies in charge believe, the claims that have been thrown out later, which seem to be some sort of damage control. After it's thoroughly established in with historians and, Plato, the people these people revere, later on it comes out, well, maybe that wasn't what's going on. But keep in mind when Freemasonry was established and when the counterclaims were made. The counterclaims were made fucking later. For example, Muhammad Hassan Fantar, 1936, is a professor of ancient history and archaeology. This is hundreds of years after Masonry is made. The rituals and beliefs of Masonry predate the counterclaims of later historians, which is my point, which corroborates my argument that it's what they believe, not per se what actually happened, which is important. These are baby-killing, gender feminist loving, bisexual, androgynous deity, Moloch, Baal, and Saturn worshipping scum that I am talking about. Does anyone have any questions or doubts?